Welcome to Drone Basics for New Pilots. I'm Lorraine Moffa, Programming Coordinator with Loudoun County Public Library and your host this evening. Please feel free to send me any questions or comments you may have during the program by typing them in the chat box, and I will relay them to our presenter at the end of her presentation. And it is my great pleasure now to introduce our presenter, Missie Ellis, and she is the owner of Vantage Point Drones. Welcome, Missie.
Oh, thank you, Lorraine. Welcome everyone to Drone Basics. This webinar will be focused on the new drone operator just starting out. So my goal is to give you the confidence in knowing the rules and regulations so you'll feel more comfortable in flying your drone. And once you're in the air, how to capture some stunning and epic content. Get my controls going. Okay, so a little bit about myself. I'm Missy, and like Lorraine said, I own Vantage Point Drone. I'm also on the FAA Safety Team as the DronePro for Northern Virginia because of my experience in the industry. I go around the community and help educate people on the drone rules and regulations in an effort to make our airspace safe. I got a drone after seeing one fly at a road race my husband was running in Reston, and I had one ordered by the time we got home. That was the summer of 2014. I was hooked, and I knew quickly that I wanted to turn it into a business. And all the images are images I put down where I took them so that you guys can see where they're at. So here's what I'll be covering tonight. Why drones are so popular, what's a recreational operator versus a commercial operator, the trust test for recreational operators, drone registration, some rules and regulations, how to identify what airspace you are in, either it'll be uncontrolled or controlled, our local airspace, and how to get approval in controlled airspace using the app called Aloft, what to inspect before your flight, and lastly, some tips and tricks I've learned along the way to make your images look better. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them at the end of the presentation. So let's begin. The modern era of drones began about 9 years ago with the release of DJI's Phantom 1. DJI stands for Daijang Innovations, which means in Mandarin, the frontier before us. Before that, people would just tinker around with their remote controls. Mainly they're like do-it-yourself kits. They were very difficult to fly, and more times than not, they would crash. I saw my father crash his fair share of RC planes. The Phantom 1 was user-friendly, affordable. It didn't need any assembly, which was a big plus. It used GPS satellites to hold its position in the sky. So that capability to hover without even touching the joysticks had people that wouldn't have considered flying a drone flying one. And I'm in that category. So industry was born. I recommend the DJI drones because they are easy to figure out how to fly. They have different models for different budgets. So the price varies from $300 on up. The one in the picture is the DJI Inspire 2, and actually that's on the higher end on the price. All of them are good. So start with the cheap one if you don't already have one, and look for deals this holiday season. I have seen them at Costco's and BJ's, wholesale for a really good price, and they just released the Mavic 3, so I anticipate the Mavic 2 to go on sale at these places though. So the recreational flyer versus the commercial operator is someone who operates their drone just for fun or personal enjoyment purposes only. So if this describes you, then you need to take the trust, and I'll explain more about this a little bit later, but trust stands for the Recreational UAS Safety Test. If this doesn't describe you, then you're either don't fly drones and you're just here to find out more information on drones, or you're a commercial operator and you have your Part 107, which is the FAA's test to get a commercial certificate. This is important if you have your Part 107 and you fly for fun occasionally, then you still need to take the trust as well. I have taken the trust for those rare times that I get out and fly just for fun, though. A good point to mention here is there's a lot of debate on social media. If you're out flying as a recreational operator and you captured an awesome image, you posted it on your social media, and now somebody has approached you and wants to actually buy it, which congratulations. People will say, can I sell it or not sell it? You can sell it, even though you're not a commercial operator. It's the intent at the time that you took the image. So you were just out flying recreationally, not with the intentions of selling an image. And now, if you start looking around with the intention of capturing an image to sell, or like you have a business and you're taking images of that for like a venue, which is considered furthering your business, then you would need to take the Part 107. I hope everyone understands that point I'm trying to make here. So fly for fun. Though let's look closely at the trust. This is the new test as of June of this summer. So many people aren't aware of it. It's a knowledge and safety test for the recreational operator under the exception of limited recreational operations of unmanned aircraft. So it's 49 U.S. Code 44809, though. All recreational flyers are now required to take the free online test. It doesn't expire, and there's no age minimum. You can take it from several test administrators. These TAs are listed on the website shown below, and I've also included the QR code if you want to get out your phone and take a picture to review later. It will take you to the site, and you can click on one of the TAs is like Boy Scouts of America, and it will take you to their test. I like to caution you, though, to make sure that you're on an FAA approved test administrator site. So if they're asking you for a credit card, then you're not on an approved TA site because it's a free test. The trust is divided into two sections. The first section provides you with information that is needed to pass the test, and you cannot fail the test. They've made it pretty easy here. If you answer the question incorrectly, you'll be provided with information on why your answer was incorrect, and will prompt you to try again. So don't stress over it. I recommend trying to carve out 30 minutes. You won't use 30 minutes so that you don't have any interruptions and you don't feel rushed and you can absorb the information. I had mentioned that there is no age limit, and I have been asked by young operators taking the test, and I recommend that like a parent or an adult guide them through the test. This is a perfect opportunity to be able to explain further the harder concepts like airspace and tailor that discussion to the child's comprehension level. No one fails, and it's really good training. I like to look at it as like a building block to expand your drone expertise. Everyone flying a recreationally that operates a drone is required to take the test. So if you're outside and you have the controls in your hand, you need to take the trust. But if you are in your house, like a young child in the house playing with a smaller drone, then of course they don't need to take it though. Once you are finished with the trust, you'll receive a completion certificate. It just pops up. It looks like the image there up at the top. It will have the name you entered at the beginning before taking the trust, so make sure that you type that correctly. A token is generated by the TA that will have a 4-letter TA ID plus 11 random numbers. And the TA name, it will be in the issued by section. There will be only the trust logo and the FAA logo only. So at the end, that certificate will appear. Print several copies and save a digital copy. It never expires, but however, if you lose your certificate, you will need to retake the test and obtain a new certificate. And the reason you must do so is because the test administrator nor the FAA will maintain personal identifiable information about you. So it's not possible for them to reissue your original certificate. So I recommend making lots of copies and then place them in your drone case, toolkit, and one in your wallet, somewhere that it's accessible should you need to present the trust certificate to any FAA or law enforcement officer when requested. So the objective of the trust is to increase awareness, and it's not to punish non-compliance flyers, though, because drones can be very simple to fly. It's easy to think that there is not much risk in flying one, but the reality is that drones have collided with other aircrafts, and drones are considered an aircraft too. So they've injured people and they've caused property damage. So safety is everyone's responsibility, and trust is designed to provide you with the information that will help you fly safely and keep our national airspace safe for everyone. There have been roughly about 136,000 trusts taken to date. However, there are over 521,000 registered recreational operators. So we have a long way to go in getting the word out about trust. And not everyone is on social media, and reaching those flyers is difficult. So you can help us by mentioning trust to family and friends that you know operate as a recreational flyer. One of my nephews recently visited me. He is traveling the countryside in a van, and he flies his drone. So before he left Aunt Missie's house, I had him take the trust and printed a bunch of copies for him. So take the trust at your convenience. So then you must register your drone if it weighs more than 0.55 pounds on the website called faa.dronezone.faa.gov. It costs $5, and the number you get is good for all your drones. You must mark your drone on the outside with the registration number, and there are plenty of businesses that make the labels like the one below the image of the drone. But you can just use a permanent marker. Use something that won't come off in flight. I also keep the registration card, which is the image at the bottom, in my drone case. I just leave it there. I just got my new Mavic 3 in yesterday, and I'll be going on the Drone Zone tomorrow to register it before I test it out, though. So some rules and regulations. on flying your drone. The height is 400-foot AGL or lower in uncontrolled airspace. And the reason is set at 400 AGL is that helicopters are set at 500 feet or higher. And this gives us 100-foot separation between the two. I know I've seen at the beach, they look like they're much lower than their 500, but anyway, there you go. We have to yield to them. You must get approval to fly in controlled airspace. So you keep your drone in sight, don't fly near other aircrafts, don't fly in restricted areas like DC, military bases, national parks, etc. Don't fly over people or fly near emergency response efforts, as they can't fly when we're in the area. And obviously don't fly under the influence. So more information on these rules can be found at FAA/gov/UAS/recreational_flyers. Uncontrolled airspace and controlled airspace. This is really important, especially it can be feel a little overwhelming at first, but hopefully I can break it down for you guys. Uncontrolled airspace is called Class G. You can remember this as G stands for good airspace. It's not near any airports, and you don't need to get authorization to fly. Just go out and fly. In controlled airspace, you will be near an airport and you need to request authorization to fly. Most airports now participate in LAANC, which stands for Low Altitude and Notification Capability. You can use an app to request approval to fly in the area. Our area airports like Dulles, Manassas, and Fredericks, they all use LAANC. I just want you to know that, like, if you travel and you come across an airport, if you're in the airport vicinity and they don't have LAANC, not every airport has LAANC at this time, you need to go back to that FAA drone zone where you registered your drone and put in, you just fill out the information that's on there of when you want to fly. But you need to know that that is not instant. It'll take you 3 to 4 days to get approval to fly in an airport that doesn't have LAANC. You don't need to get approval to fly in an FAA approved fixed recreational flying site like AMA, which is the Academy of Model Aeronautics. We have one called Loudoun County Aeromodelers Association, and that's off of Woods Road in Leesburg. And you can check them out at lcaa.org, I believe, if you're interested in that. We also have a designated area, drone area at the Ida Lee Park. It's just down past the pool, and then you'll see a hockey field, and then the field behind that is where you can fly your drone. Don't fly, of course, over people. Generally, when I've been out there, there's never been anyone on that field. It kind of been to the right to the soccer field or the field hockey. So it's a good place to practice, get really comfortable with your drone and the controls. You can practice your flight patterns, the figure eights, and so forth on it. So that's a good little area to fly. Okay, here's an overview of our area. It's crazy looking, I know. Though the only airport that isn't in controlled airspace is the Leesburg Airport, and it does become controlled at 700 feet above ground level. The airport manager, Scott Kaufman, I have been in communication with him. It seems like every job I get is around that airport. But what he likes you to do is to notify the airport of any drone flights in the area. And you can do so by going to their website, and under contacts, there'll be a drone notification drop-down menu, and just let them know that you're flying in the area where you're at, and the the height that you're going to be at. It's a courtesy email, and I always do it. The pin drop on the map right here is in Dulles Airspace, which is Class B Bravo. And just below it is a small green circle is Manassas. You have Frederick up here. And then, of course, you have Baltimore, which is Class B. Frederick is Class D, though. So then you have the 3 red circles in the middle. And this is the 15-mile radius to DC. And then you have Reagan, and you have Fort Belvoir in this red circle, and below is Quantico. The orange center one is that 15-mile radius, though. You can't fly in there. Your drones probably wouldn't even be able to turn on because most drones have a geofencing, and you won't be able to fly. But if you have a homemade drone, please don't attempt to fly there, because they have the technology to know where you have launched, and you don't want to have that kind of heat on you. This is our local airspace. If you can fly in the yellow and in the white, though. So those are the areas that are uncontrolled. If you fly in Frederick, Dulles, Manassas, and Baltimore, you would then use the app called Aloft, and it's free to get permission to be able to fly in those areas. So what I want to do is show you, this is Dulles, and I'm going to show you a close-up of this. It looks kind of green, but it's really blue, but I think with the yellow underneath, it's showing me kind of slightly more green. But so this is what it looks like. It has these grids on there, and it's a 5-mile radius, though, and the zeros are the airport, and like maybe on the other side of the fence of the airport, though. Note on the outer edges, though, you can fly up to 400, and as you get closer to the airport, the max altitude gets lower. So you have like 350, 150, and then 0, though. So when you pull up an address on Aloft, they will be showing you the max altitude, 400 or 150, or if you're near a 0-foot grid, it'll tell you 0. So this is where they're pulling those numbers from. I did want to show you something, point out on the smaller map, though. If you're flying, say, at this Goose Creek Village Park South, though, you don't actually need to get authorization. See the faded blue arc here? This is that circle that's on the bigger map. And this is where 2 systems kind of clash. They, the grids are in squares, and then you have the radius in a circle. So the controlled airspace is actually in the radius. So this all in here is controlled airspace. Outside of that is uncontrolled. It's Class G, and it's good. So all up in here, you can fly and not apply for approval to fly. The other area that I come across that a lot is over by One Loudoun, though. So I hope that clarifies the outer edges. And you can see how this affects all up in here and around that. That is uncontrolled. It's inside the radius. No. Okay, so let me walk you through the steps and get an approval. And in Dulles, I'm still using the sample for Class B Bravo. You've downloaded the app called Aloft, and you want to fly. You can request approval prior to flying or when you're on site. it'll just pull up where you're at, just like the GPS for like a map for driving, though. I'm at the green dot with the white circle around it up here. And I'm going to tap on the plus sign. It says add. And then the next menu comes up, a drop down menu that you want to tap request Lance authorization. So the next menu will show the airspace, and I can see at the bottom in the blue that I am in Class B with 11 restrictions, and KIAD is the identifier of Dulles Airport. All North America airports will start with a K and followed by 3 letters that identify the airport. You click on that blue banner, and the next image is what you'll see. You'll see the restrictions at the bottom. There's more because there's a total of 11 of them, but I just did a screenshot of it for the webinar, though. And then it shows that my max altitude is permissible up to 400 feet. So, and you can also see what the weather is. So if you clicked on weather, and you want to check that out, you can see that what the weather looks like. You don't want to fly in high winds. I typically don't like flying in over 20 miles an hour wind. I have drones that can handle 35, but I really don't like to push their limitations. So the weather looks good here at 64 degrees, winds at 8 miles an hour out of the south, and gusts to 19 miles an hour. So the visibility is 10 miles. So it looks good. So I'm going to click on the airspace up at the top, and it's going to give me the next menu. And then I'm going to click on get authorization. Now it'll ask you if you're a Part 107 operator or recreational. So you're going to tap on recreational. And on the next image on the right, it will ask what altitude do you want to fly at. And now I can fly at 400, and that green will go all the way up to the green, just like on this image. And you don't have to go up to 400. You can tap the green slider, say around 300 if you want, if that's really indeed what you're going to fly at. I generally will tap on the max altitude that I can. I'm really probably not going to fly at 400. Real estate and most of the stuff that I do is around 150. But I do want to point out one thing is that when I took this image, I've already tapped on the 400, and then it made the next blue. But otherwise, until I tap on that green slider bar, it would be grayed out, and you won't be able to advance to the next page, though. So that's important, and I think most of you guys could figure that one out, though. But I did want to point that out. So if you're at the 350-foot grid, the green slider would just go up to the 350, and if you're at the 150, it'll do that as well, though. So this is where you can set the date and time and duration. The authorization can be made up to 90 days in advance. Each authorization can be made up to 12 hours in duration and 10 nautical miles in the area. No ops are allowed for recreational flyers in controlled airspace. If you're flying in civil twilight, you need to have anti-collision lights, and civil twilight is 30 minutes before sunrise and 30 minutes after sunset. So I just Google anti-collision drone lights, and then you can purchase them online for your drone, and then you can attach them with little Velcro. So I put them on if it's low lighting. It actually really helps you see your drone out if it gets a little further from you, though. So they're good to have in your toolkit. So you're going to click on next, and then you're going to review the information, and then you click on next again. Then there's the privacy statement. Tap on agree and submit. And the next image I want you to see how quickly the approval came in. Before I could even exit out of the app, I got the text alert at the top with the approval. And then you'll also receive an email. So it's pretty fast. So it's to me, a lot of people think this is a big inconvenience, but it's pretty quick. So once you get in the habit of doing them, it doesn't take any time though. I recommend keeping a logbook. You don't have to, but I like to note the authorization number on it. So that's getting approval and controlled airspace in a nutshell, though. But I wanted you guys to know that that is something that you have to do. And since we have Dulles, it takes a big chunk of our airspace. Most likely that's what you will have to do too. So safety inspection. If you need to inspect, I always inspect actually at home, and then I do it out in the field for cracks, either on the drone itself or the propellers. Check to see if your batteries aren't puffy. They get puffy in heat. In the summer months, they can get puffy. Make sure you have some more batteries and props so that you can replace those if you need to. When you're on site, look for any hazards like wires, trees, tall buildings. Tall buildings can interfere with the GPS signal. People, because you don't want to fly over people, and any wildlife, because some birds can attack your drone. So I usually pull up Google Earth, and then I check it out. And before you launch, I always make sure that I have plenty of battery life. I keep an eye on the battery life while flying at all times. Most accidents happen when an operator goes out and doesn't have enough battery life to return. So the drone will just fall out of the sky. So don't push it. Keep in mind, you might have headwind coming back, which will take up more of your battery life in return. So that's always good when you're looking at the weather to see which direction the wind is coming though. So check to make sure that you set your return to home point correctly for the flight. There are 3 settings for the home point. The home point, which is set when you start up your drone. You have the controller where your drone will return wherever the controller is located, or hover, and the drone will just hover in the air should it lose GPS. The return to home point is probably the most popular setting that people use, but keep in mind there's other scenarios which the other return to home points would be better to use. The controller is good. I use it when I'm on a boat because I'm not going back to where I launched from the boat. And so it will come, if it loses GPS, it will come to where the controller is. So that's pretty cool. Hover is good, say if you're flying around an urban area and you have buildings can interfere with the reception. So it'll be nice then if it does lose its GPS, it just hovers because there's less risk of it like running into a building trying to get back to your home point. So my workflow is to launch the drone and have it just hover near and above me. It gives birds and any wildlife in the area, you know, like a chance to hear me and then fly away. I take that time to look at how many satellites I'm connected to, if there are any system errors that might appear. It is better to take care of those issues with the drone close by than have it far away and be dealing with these issues. And it also gives the battery a chance to warm up in the colder months. We are entering the colder months and the battery's life isn't as cold, it isn't as long in the cold I've actually been moving some of my days on the colder days to the warmer days for that reason. Um, to help with this, you can take hand warmers and put them in an insulated bag and then put your batteries in there, and that will help to extend their life. Okay, on to the histogram, the photography stuff. So the histogram is, in my opinion, the most important feature on your drone to be able to take the best picture. It's the best exposed image. So the histogram is a graphical representation of that tonal distribution of an image. So it can verify that we recorded a good exposure, because what my phone or my tablet that I'm using as the first person view, I could have the brightness set or at a different setting than how you have the setting. This is a depiction of the image that you're taking through your camera. So it's really important. It aids you to show you whether the image detail has been lost to blown out highlights, which would look like everything pushed to the far right, or blackout shadows, which would look like everything is pushed to the far left. And you can access this by opening up your DJI app, your camera settings, and the gear wheel, and then just hit the slider for histogram. Now your histogram will pop up on your first person view, but it can be moved to a corner of it that's not going to distract you at all. So I never photograph without the histogram being on. This is the proper exposure. You want those mountains to be in the middle. Now there are some cases like in low lighting, it will be more to the left, but play around with that and you'll get a good feel yourself on a properly exposed image using the histogram. And at the end, when you pull it off your memory card and you see it, you'll go, oh wow, I need to have my mountain range a little more in the middle. But don't be scared to play around with that. The photography tips, these are the camera views. You have nadir, which is the lens straight down. You have oblique, where you have the camera at pitch that is between level and straight downward. You have horizontal, which is the straight outward, which all these kind of make sense to you guys. And you have parallel, and it's parallel to the ground. And then upward is any camera pitch that is above horizontal. So you're not wasting so much of your battery trying to figure things out in the air. Have an idea of what you're wanting to shoot using these camera views. I come up with a shot list before I even start my drone. This one is image was in Hillsborough, and this was featured in one of our local papers, though. So this is, to me, Northern Virginia, the rolling hills. It's very pretty. So okay, so picking the right time to capture an awesome image is sometimes just pure luck, but we have tools at our disposal that can help you decide when's the good time to go out to a place. I like TPE app. It's the photographer's ephemeris. I use it to figure out the time where there'll be the least amount of shadow, say for a real estate shoot. It'll show the direction that the sun's coming in, and on the back side it will have the shadows, and there's a slider so you can slide it and see that black line getting small, and then that's generally a good time to be out there to capture it, though. But while you're flying, go to different altitudes to see how your point of interest looks, and move in and back to switch up that field of view. Oftentimes on a drone image, it will appear clustered. the higher you go. So just keep that in mind, though. Work at switching up your settings quickly. Again, the reason for that is so that you're not eating up your battery life. These images are of the Bramilton Library, and the lower one, in my opinion, is the better framed one. It's using the rule of thirds, and you can Google more on the rule of thirds and get other examples of it. But the entrance to the library is on the thirds, and you can pull up these lines on your drone so that shows up on the FPV so that you can frame your shot better. Though, but you can practice rule of thirds on your iPhone as well, though, and it'll just come second nature to you when you're framing a shot. So always make sure that you can identify your subject in the image. Try not to let the top of your main subject align with the horizon. So look at this image. The tops of the buildings are clearly defined. If I had flown the drone up more, the tops would have been lost in the skyline. So shoot from a lower altitude to lessen distortion. You can fix that in post, like with Lightroom, but if you don't have an editing software program, you need to keep that in mind when you're shooting. The lower altitudes will be better for you. Again, I always use the histogram for that correct exposure. I can't emphasize this enough. It's so important and warranted mentioning again. And then be prepared to race against the battery before you even take off. Once that low battery beeping starts, you're just going to feel anxious to return your drone back. So have a plan in mind so you aren't wasting that battery life. There's an image coming up where that planning had saved me. And then after you capture that epic image, land and swap out your memory card. Some operators will swap out their SD cards with every battery change. I don't do that. I've probably done it over the 7 years, probably a dozen times. I did it in Iceland because I was flying around a volcano. So when I landed, I'd swap out my SD card, put a new one in because I didn't, in case it landed in the volcano, I didn't want to lose my content. And then I will do it over water just to be safe, though. So, and then make sure that your lens is clean. It sounds simple, but I ruined some footage where some bug guts from a shoot in the day were on my lens and I didn't notice it. And then I did a nighttime shoot. And then when I played the footage, it was so prominent in a nighttime shoot. It was actually embarrassing and I had to reshoot that. So I put that in my workflow. I make sure that the lens is clean. So here are some framing suggestions. The leading lines, it leads your eye to the subject, though. So this is one of the duck keys and duck cut, though, and this is actually opening season for lobster. So that's why you see so many boats there. They're all diving for lobsters, though. Another example of leading lines that lead the eye to the sun. Also, there's negative space in the image to the right. Marketing agencies like this so that they can add their advertisement to the image. I'm mentioning this so that you're aware and can practice that and add that to your workflow. I will take a shot aligning the bridge how I want, and then I'll take another one with just negative space there. So here's a rule of thirds, and I mentioned earlier with the Tyson's one to not have your point of interest drop down below the horizon so that you can see it, so it's well defined. But in this case, see, there's always a rule to it. My focus is actually on the sunset here. So that's why it's shot. And then the hospital is on the thirds, the line of thirds. Symmetry in patterns is one of my favorite to capture. And here are the rows of the pecan trees and their shadows on this top down. And this time of year, top downs and shadows are big. The way the sun is right now, it's great to do shadows though. And controlling the view, I like to use nature as a frame. In this image, I am using the evergreens on the left and the limbs on the tree on the right to frame the home here. Okay, when shooting over water, you're either capturing a subject in the water or on top. For capturing something on top, you want to underexpose for the boat to pop on top of the water. And then if you're shooting something below, you want to overexpose it to see deeper in the water. So these images are actually shot not too far from one another, though. So your histogram for the left one is going to be pushed to the left, your mountain rim, your little peaks on your mountains on the histogram, and on the right it's going to be pushed more towards the right. Here's another example of a top down, which I think is most people that fly a drone, they want to shoot a top down though, and you can see why. It's gorgeous. Okay, this image is of a wedding venue featuring their 100-year-old popular barn with the cornfield in the distance. And this is one of my favorite images. It's actually on my business card. The only way to get this image is by using a drone. So just wait, you're going to start looking around, wondering what view your drone will be able to reveal to you to give you that great vantage point. The first year that I had the drone, my head was on a swivel driving around Loudoun, thinking, oh, what can my drone see here? So just wait, you're in for a treat. So be creative. It was just a fun time with my husband here. I was trying to get it to look like he was jumping over a gap between like the two tennis courts, but didn't quite understand the look I was going for. So in the center frame on the bottom, he isn't even on the correct shoulder, though. We played around with others on the top frame. We had him sitting, and then his legs dangling here, and then he had a fishing pole, which I tied off to the fence, and he leaned back, making it look like he had a big catch. And then while we were in the Outer Banks, there was a ton of sea foam, and I drew a big bathtub in the sand, and he was in it, and then a big wave came and knocked him over, but he requested I didn't share that image with you guys, so I didn't go, but just have fun. So timing and planning, I mentioned is so important, especially going against that battery life. I knew that the mock Air Force One was going to be coming into the National Harbor from reading some social media sites, and I found that the tug's name, and I downloaded a maritime app to show me where it was. It was traveling down the eastern shore and then going to be entering the Potomac. And I kept checking on its progress. So when it was about, I thought it would be about an hour and a half out from the point that I wanted to fly at, we took off to drive to the area. I wanted a point that was the narrowest part of the water, which was like Virginia and Maryland, and I used Google Earth because I didn't know if it was going to be hugging Maryland side or Virginia or right down the middle, and I knew that there's a big gap in the water, and I really didn't want to fly, you know, the miles you're marked. And so I only kind of want to do a half a mile, because it gets past a half a mile, I can't see the drone, and you're supposed to always have eyes on it. So and then I wanted to be outside of Quantico. Remember that bottom red circle is Quantico, so I wanted to be in G airspace. So I checked out all that, had that area, but when we got there, there was no public places, and I went, oh no, all this, and I'm not going to be able to do it. But I saw somebody unloading their car, and I asked them permission to launch from their property, and they agreed. So I had then about roughly 30 more minutes before it was in sight, and I used that time to visualize the shots that I wanted, to be able to quickly switch from video to photos. Then I visualize, I mean, I'm sitting there with my eyes closed thinking about all this stuff. And what if something went wrong? I needed to know the landscape of where I was located, to quickly return to home, you know, etc. So when the plane came into view, I was ready. I didn't miss one shot that I wanted. And I sold the image and the footage to Storyful, and I'm still getting money off of the sale of this. That was probably the best time I had on planning a mission from scratch, and it all worked out. So it's pretty cool. So the bottom line for me is for advice for you guys is that you fly what you're passionate about. Images will just turn out better. I don't shoot cars. I don't care about them. So I'm probably not the best person to capture their images. And there may be some of you guys that do like cars. I have been contacted by the Porsche Club, but the weather didn't cooperate for that shoot. So I'll never know if I can shoot a car. Some people like cover bridges, barns, beaches, or whatever, but find your passion, and go ahead and have fun with it with your drone. My favorite apps that I use, Google Earth, I mentioned several times. I use that to check for obstacles before going to a location. You don't really see the power lines, but you can see the poles. Aloft again is important because that's how I get my authorization to fly in controlled airspace. Windy to make sure I'm not flying in higher winds that the drone can't handle. UAV forecast and AccuWeather, as I use interchangeably, to check cloud cover and visibility. TPE for the shadows. And the FAA has an app called Before You Fly. It's free. It will tell you the airspace and about TFRs, which is a temporary flight restriction. So TFRs will pop up without any notice. A TFR happens for like VIPs traveling, like the president. They'll do a TFR for like a disaster like wildlife to keep the airspace open to responders. And they'll do a TFR for an NFL game. So we can't fly in those areas, and they're stated the time and hours on those TFRs. I'll just Google TFRs, and then there'll be a drop-down menu for Virginia, and then I'll check it out. We get them in our area for the Leesburg Airport, for example, like when they had their air show, we'll have it the day of the air show, and that keeps other aircrafts away and drones away. So you need to know about TFRs, and the Before You Fly app will have the TFRs though. Armis is a free checklist if you're interested in checklists. Litchi, if you are interested in trying out mapping, autonomous flights, Litchi is a good beginner one. Canva I use for graphic designs on social medias, on my images, like, you know, I'll do a holiday greeting or on it, or you know, something along those lines. And the last one, of course, doesn't need any explaining. So I know that is a lot of information thrown at you guys. This is recorded, Lorraine, and she can tell you where you can look at this later. But if you have any questions, you can email me at missy@vpdrone.com if you come up with any questions later.